Cool. Well, I'm Adam Hailstone. I'm with Williamsburg Learning. Williamsburg is a middle school and high school program. We are national and international, have about 1,000 students next year. We're projected to have about 1,300 students around the country and around the world. And so we serve grades 6 and up. We were created by myself and 6 other people. We kind of built the program over the last almost 8 years now, and we were all homeschooled, and so we built the program for homeschoolers and designed it around what would we want as homeschoolers. And so that's what we've created it for. And I'm doing a workshop later on the program, so I won't take much time to talk about it, but if you have any questions, let me know and I'd be happy to talk to you about it. But today what I'm going to teach you about is how to think, not want to think. It's a big thing that we emphasize in our program, is we want to teach students how to think. Jana was telling me about her son he took Euclidean geometry, which is definitely a class where you're going to be taught how to think, not what to think, right? You're not going to be just taught equations, you're going to learn how to think through equations. And maybe you can share with everyone your son's experience real fast.
Well, we were going through the elections, and he was watching the commercials, or he'd watch the debates, and he'd be like, well, really, they can't use that as a fact because they didn't back it up with blah, 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 blah. I was like, what? You're 16. So I would take my questions to him, and he would say, well, they really didn't back it up, or you gotta go to this website to get the real, these guys actually, everything now, he has to question it, why Mom, you're wrong. So it's a little bit annoying because he's such a good thinker that questions what I think.
Yeah, it's good, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about today, is really learning how to think and creating an atmosphere as well of thinking. So let's dive in. Who's ever had basically this guy as a teacher? You know, the person who wants to tell you, profess to you what to think, right? And basically the name of the game is you need to know what they're saying, what they want to hear, and you regurgitate that back through tests and so forth, and you get a good grade if you essentially not only agree, but even phrase things and cue things the way that the professor does. Anyone ever had that experience before with teachers? It's a frustrating, really, really frustrating experience. What that creates is what's called the Ophelia complex. Professor Bateman at BYU coined the phrase the Ophelia complex. Anyone ever read Hamlet? Play Hamlet? Ophelia is a character in that play, and at one point she becomes very confused, and if you've read the play you'll totally understand why. And she goes to her father, or her stepfather, and says, I don't know what to think, essentially. And he says, think of yourself as a baby, and I will tell you what to think. And so she says, okay, and tragically she ends in suicide because she doesn't know what to think for herself, and she's constantly surrounded by these contradictions. So at Williamsburg, we emphasize learning how to think, learning not what to think, not what the answer is, but how you achieve the answer and what are better answers. And so students are allowed to not only master in their subjects, meaning that they can move through it as quickly as they want because they can master the topics. Furthermore, they can even change assignments and so forth because they're allowed that flexibility of what do you want to be learning and how, and they can augment assignments and request those augmentations so that they can learn how to better think. So we're going to go through 3 things today. We're going to go through psychological projections, psychological safety, and confirmation bias. Okay? Cognitive biases, and specifically confirmation bias. So let's jump in here. First of all, we're going to go through psychological projections, okay? Taking ownership of your thinking. I'm going to pull a story from a book called Integral Life Practice by Ken Wilber and 3 others. And I've augmented I'm taking basically his story, but I've augmented it for our purposes and kind of made it more applicable. So I want to, kind of cite that up front. This is his story, but I've augmented it for our purposes. Okay, so let's talk about projections, okay? Tell me if you've ever seen your child have this experience. Emmett, that's the name of my son, decides to do his math homework. So he goes up to his room to begin. But a strange thing happens as he sits down to start. He sharpens his pencils, he cleans his desk, he updates some software on his computer, he browses some websites for tips on his math, he checks in on Facebook, he leafs through his math book, he starts to have second thoughts, he wonders if he should wait till his dad gets home in case he needs some help. What is Emmett beginning to do?
Cookie.
Yeah? He's beginning to explain.
Get distracted.
Yeah, get distracted and procrastinate. Exactly. He's beginning to procrastinate. Have you ever done that? Have you ever gone to do a task? So it's not just our kids, right? Let's be real with each other. Safe space, right? Have you ever gone to do a task and then you sort of putter around the edges of the task, but you don't really do that thing that you went to do, right? All right, some spouses are nudging each other right now. Yeah, okay. So he doesn't leave the room because his desire to do the math is still greater than his desire not to. But he is starting to procrastinate and forget his own drive. By alienating his drive, he begins to project it away from himself. He gradually becomes angry and annoyed with the whole thing. All he really needs to complete the psychological projection, that is, to totally forget his own drive to do his math, is a likely candidate upon which to project his drive. Enter the unsuspecting victim. Emmett's mom gets home. She innocently asks, "How's the math going?" So let's pause there for a second. He's beginning to project a drive. He's got a desire initially. He goes up to his room to do his math, right? He wants to do this thing, but then he starts to project it away from himself. He alienates and pushes away the drive, okay? Then it's kind of in this space, psychological space at this point. And now, to complete the projection, all he needs is something to put the projection on, okay? And we'll talk later, that comes in three forms. In this story, it can come in three forms, I should say. In this story, he's going to project it onto his mom. She innocently asks, "How's the math going?" How do you think he is going to respond? How do your kids respond in that scenario?
Negative. 5 million different excuses as to why they didn't get to it.
Yeah.
I just say it's fine.
It's fine, right? The defiant, it's fine.
My 13-year-old goes, good,
Good.
it's good.
Yeah. Avoiding, any detail, right? Yeah. Who's done this? Again, safe space, right? Let's be real with each other. Who's done this with our spouses or with our parents, with friends, right? When you feel you're procrastinating something, you're pushing it away, and someone asks you about it, you're not going to feel exactly comfortable. So Emmett responds, "Mom, arg," which I've actually never heard a teenager say arg before in my life, but that said, Emmett now feels pressure. Not from himself, but from his mom. The projection is completed. Using self-deception, he convinces himself that it is not he, but his mom that wants him to do the math. He thinks, she acts so sweet on the outside, but subtly, she's been pressuring him all along. Okay, let's pause there again. Let's think about this. When you feel pressure, do you feel motivated to do things? You really don't, right? When you feel micromanaged, do you just feel, oh boy, I'm excited to do this now? You don't, right? But here's the crazy thing. Is he being pressured by his mom? No, he created the projection because he alienated it and he needed somewhere to hang it. Mom comes in and asks a question and he puts it on to her. Now he feels pressure. Isn't that absolutely kind of nuts in a way? Yet who here has experienced exactly that, done exactly this? Be honest, raise your hands if you've done this, okay? We project onto others, sometimes onto things, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. We project it, and then we feel pressure. Can I ask you to be a volunteer for a second?
Sure.
Okay, come on up here for just a moment. Okay, let's put this into practice, this whole pressure thing, okay? What's your name?
Shannon.
Shannon. Okay, let's say, Shannon, I come up to you and I don't know you, I don't know your name. I come up to you on the street and just say, "Hi, I really need your help. I need this cow over here painted purple. Are you going to feel pressure to actually do that thing?
No, because I would think it's crazy.
Yeah, you wouldn't do that, right? You have no desire to do that thing. Now give me something that you are working on in your life, like at home or...
Like helping my kids learn to be good people. That's what I'm very motivated about.
Okay, good. Give me a project, though, that you're working on.
Oh.
Like, it can be within that, like a specific project or
Okay,
something else.
My kids, I have them do like notebooking after we read something.
Okay, so let's say I do know you, Shannon, and I say, hey, how's the notebooking going with your kids after they're reading? Or how's that going? Pause there. Do you feel some pressure?
Yes.
Do you see it? Do you see that? Why? What's the difference between the painting the cow purple, right, this ridiculous thing that you have no desire to do, and this is something you want?
Because that one I just don't care about. This is more personal.
Exactly. Thank you. So what's the difference? It's personal, as she said. It's something that we want to do. In other words, we do not feel pressure unless it's something we want to do. Take a moment and think about that. Think about your kids. Have they done the mom arg, which again no one actually says, but have they reacted in that way, and do they feel pressure coming from you? Why? It's not because you're actually necessarily, you might be nagging them. You might be pressuring them, but they won't feel pressure unless it's something they want to do. Okay? If Emmett were really innocent of the drive, he probably would have answered that he hadn't really begun and that he was now going to begin. But he did not, because in his gut, he knew that somebody really wanted him to do his math today. Since it feels clear that it wasn't him, it must have been somebody else. As his mom, the likely candidate, appears, he throws his projected drive onto her. By projecting his drive, Emmett experiences it externally. Think about that for a moment. We experience that pressure, that desire, that drive externally from the outside when we feel pressure. As a demand coming from the outside, another word for external drive is pressure. In fact, any time a person projects some sort of drive, he or she will feel pressure coming from the outside. Believe it or not, this is all external pressure amounts to in the end. External pressure can only be effective if it can hook your projected drive. Now, what if his mom really did nag him to do his math? And what if she marched in and demanded that he get it done now? Has anyone ever done that? Yeah. Get this done now, right? Wouldn't that change the whole picture? Wouldn't Emmett be feeling her pressure instead of his own? No. This doesn't change the story at all. She'd be a better hook for the projection by displaying the same quality Emmett's about to project onto her. She'd make it oh so inviting, but what matters still is his projected drive. Okay, back to you. If I came up to you and I was like, please paint the cow purple, you might be really annoyed, you might be kind of weirded out, or, you'll have a lot of, but you're not going to actually have a desire to do that thing, right? You're only going to have a desire to do that thing and feel actual pressure to accomplish that thing unless you want to do it in the first place. It's the same for all of us in these situations. So, the first principle of learning how to think is taking ownership of your thinking, ownership of your drives. Okay? Let me share an experience that I had as a youth. When I was 12 years old, I was homeschooled, and my parents put me into this sort of assistance program to homeschool, or sort of co-op type thing. We met there at this building 3 days a week, and it was kind of a funny program. It was run by some kind of hippie homeschooler types. They were conservatives though, so they were like these hippie conservatives. It was kind of interesting. And they really believed in the concept inspire, not require. Have you ever heard of that phrase, inspire, not require? They really believed in this idea. And it's basically where they won't force you. No one's going to force you to learn. You have to want to learn. And so the very first thing they said on day one was, if you don't want to learn, you don't have to. And my 12-year-old brain went, really? And within about 5 minutes, I raised my hand and I said, well, what do you really mean by that? And they said, well, like if you don't want to be here, you don't need to come. You don't need to be here. If you need to get up and leave or whatever, go ahead. We only want you to learn if you want to learn. And my 12-year-old mind went, suckers. What a bunch of suckers. So I quickly, by, hour into the first day, I left the room and went and kind of explored this building. And went outside and skateboarded and found a basketball hoop and started playing hoops. They also had these bathrooms at this building. It's the weirdest place. They were huge, like this, me to that wall, and roughly about half the size of the width of this room. Big bathrooms, right? They had the stalls and so forth on one side, and then sinks, and then couches. And my 12-year-old self went, oh, what a great place to take a nap. So I would go take a nap and sleep, and loved that. And that was just wonderful. And my adult self says, girl, sleeping in a bathroom, but 12 years old, I didn't really think about that. So I did that really for almost an entire school year. Just hung out, played basketball, skateboarded outside, and slept in a bathroom. And that summer, I was hanging out with my best friend Ryan, and Ryan and I growing up, we loved statistics. We kept stats on everything we did, like average steps between each other's homes and how many steps, and basketball games in the front yard, and football and video games and dice games, and anything we could do, we'd keep statistics, and we'd keep just log and log after log of statistics. In fact, I was hanging out with him recently, and he pulled out this book of stats that he had kept for years of all these games and all these things that we had done. And I was like, you haven't thrown that away? And he's like, it's our childhood in statistical form. I can't throw it away. And he's like, this is us, It was fun leafing through it. So that summer, he one day I'm hanging out with him, and he goes, oh, hey, I just learned how they figure out QB rating, which is quarterback rating in football. And it's basically where they combine 9 different statistics into one number. Okay, and that's a rating for how good a QB is. So, so he starts to sit down, and it takes basically some pre-algebra to do the equation. And I'm sitting there, and I should have learned pre-algebra that year, but hadn't. And he starts doing the equation, and I can't follow him. I have no clue what he's doing. And he doesn't have, he's got the sensitivity of a 12-year-old boy, right? Or a 13-year-old boy at this point. So he's not exact, he's like, what? You idiot? Come on, you know this stuff, and I feel really dumb. And I'm like, oh. And for the first time, it dawns on me, I just wasted a whole year sleeping in a bathroom. What was I doing, right? And I made some excuse. Oh, my mom needs me. And I leave and I go home, and I'm walking home, and the weight of the world is on my shoulders, and I'm thinking, what was I doing? So I get home, still projecting. I get home, and I get mad at my mom. Mom, why didn't you make me learn this year? Well, it's your education. Well, no, you shouldn't have sent me to that weird school and blah, 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 and again, still projecting it onto her. Whose responsibility in my mind was my education? Hers. Right? It was hers, not mine. Well, it's your education. Yeah, you say that. That's something people say, but it's your thing, Mom, right? That's how I'm feeling. So we're going back and forth, and finally she says, well, why don't we go and talk to so-and-so at the school? He's kind of like the school counselor. Why don't we go talk to him and see what he thinks? I was like, okay. And I'm thinking, in the back of my mind, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. I'm mad at this guy. So 3 days later, we go down to talk to him. We sit down, and I tell him, and I'm like, I didn't really do anything this year, and I should have, and I know that's my fault, but you guys should have, what's with your school, and blah, 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 what I mean? I'm giving him a piece of my mind. And I'm sure to this day, or, at that time, he was just feeling like, this idiot kid, what is he doing? Why is he blaming me for this, right? You made the choice. But I felt like it was his responsibility. And anyway, he finally says something like, Adam, or I said something like, I'm probably behind a year. Maybe I'll have to leave high school a year late. Oh no, and then it's all dawning on me, and I'm feeling the pressure of the world. And he's like, Adam, no. He's like, if you want to learn, you can take off. You can learn as quickly as you want to. In fact, I bet you could even graduate a year early. And I said, yeah, right. Maybe I'll graduate 2 years early. And he says, okay. And he gets up, he goes to this whiteboard in his office, and he starts jotting down this whole plan. And at this point, I'm 13, and so to graduate 2 years early, I'd graduate at 16, and so it would be a 3-year plan. And he creates this whole 3-year plan, doesn't look at me for probably 8-10 minutes, right? Just jots out this entire plan, everything that I'd have to cover, all the subjects I'd have to cover, what I have to do to meet all the graduation requirements, lays it all out there, and then he turns around and he says, "What do you think?" And to this day, I have no clue why I said this. I said, "Okay, let's do it." And then I went, "Whoa, what did I say that for?" But it was for the first time in my life that I took responsibility, that I took ownership of my education. I was no longer projecting it onto him, my mom, someone else. It was mine. I took back the psychological projection. Went to work, hard work. Worked all that summer, worked through the school years, worked every summer. Eventually graduated 2 years early. And I'll be honest, it wasn't an amazing high school education. I believe what we're doing now at Williamsburg is far superior. But I did learn how to work hard. I jumped through a lot of hoops, but I learned how to work hard, get things done, and take ownership. It wasn't until I got to college that I got a real liberal arts education and learned how to think. But that was the first step. The first step in learning how to think is taking ownership of your thinking, taking ownership of your drives, taking ownership of your desires. If you don't do that, all of your thinking is someone else's problem. All of your thinking is blamed on someone else. And sometimes not just someone else, but we can also blame personal identities and other things. Let's go to personal identity. Have you ever heard someone, after getting angry maybe, they blame their temper as if it's separate from them? Like, "Sorry I got angry with you earlier, it's my temper." As if it's like this separate thing. "It's my temper, I've got this thing, it's this temper, it's its fault. It's just how it is, sorry." And we blame our temper for our actions, right? Or who's ever said this phrase? "That's just the way I am. It's just, I can't do anything about it. I have no control over it. It's just the way I am," right? It's just the way I am. Or, "That's how I was raised." Or, "That's the way my parents did it," or whatever, right? We don't take responsibility for our thinking. We instead project it onto personal identities, right? And sometimes on other things. Who here's ever blamed the computer? "The stupid computer!" And we absolve ourselves of responsibility of doing things or getting things done because it's the computer's fault, or it's the project's fault, or it's other people, or it's the society, or it's Donald Trump, or whatever it is, right? Or Obama, or like we tend to not want to take responsibility for our thinking. That's all psychological projections.
The computer believes it.
Sometimes really is.
We can tell ourselves that. We can, which is really my point. So again, the first step in learning how to think, psychological projections. Okay, second step. This one might come out of left field, so bear with me, but this is vital to learning how to think, okay? This is what's called psychological safety. This concept of psychological safety was actually created by these folks, Google. Google has an organization of 50,000 plus employees, okay? That's close to the size of the city I live in, St. George proper, okay? St. George is a little bit bigger. I mean, that's a massive amount of people to manage, organize, and get them to do great things. And if their stock price has anything to show of the value of the company, they, since 2000, have grown by, no joke, 480%. Or sorry, 480,000%. They have grown massively, okay? They are one of the largest organizations in the world, one of the most powerful organizations in the world. So it became very vital to them early on in their organization that they create great leaders, that they create great managers, people who can manage employees because they have so many of them, right? So for years, they've invested a lot of time and money into their leadership, but over time they've realized, wait a second, we shouldn't just be investing into managers and trying to help them be effective. What makes a great team? Google organizes everything into teams. So everyone is a part of a team, sometimes multiple teams, and you collaborate within that team, and that's your project team. And they started to ask the question, well, what makes a great team? And this is what they thought. Julia Rozovsky, who started to do this analysis, she said, over 2 years, we conducted 200 plus interviews with Googlers, our employees, and looked at some more than 250 attributes of 180 plus active Google teams. We were pretty confident that we'd find the perfect mix of individual traits and skills necessary for a stellar team. Take one Rhodes Scholar, 2 extroverts, 1 engineer who rocks at AngularJS, and a PhD, and voila, dream team assembled, right? And so let's pause there for a moment. Think about this. If you were going to create a great team, what would you normally want to get first? People with great skills, right? We need this team member, we need that team member, we need people with all these skills that can all complement each other and work together. She says this, she says, we were dead wrong. Who is on the team matters less than how the team members interact, structure their work, and view their contributions. So much for that magical algorithm. Let me re-emphasize that last part. Who is on the team matters less than how the team members interact, structure their work, and view their contributions. At Williamsburg, we've discovered the same thing. If we can create psychological safety, and I'll get into more detail of what that is in here in a second, in our classroom, students are liberated to think, to try, to take risk, to share, to discuss, to ponder things, to go out on a limb. Well, what about this? Or argue that, or consider opposing viewpoints. Why? Because they don't feel unsafe. Have you ever been cut down in a meeting or in a work situation? Right? Cut down by someone, shut down. Do you feel like you want to take another risk? Do you want to share an idea? Do you want to experiment with this? Do you want to? No, you don't. It shuts it down. So oddly, sort of counterintuitively, the next principle of great thinking is psychological safety, is creating a space, working in a space with others where you're safe. Without that, we don't have great thinking. Here's a quote directly from the book about this. There are always good reasons for choosing behaviors that undermine psychological safety. Sorry, that's kind of cutting off there, but it's often more efficient to cut off debate, to make quick decisions, to listen to whoever knows the most, and ask others to hold their tongues. But a team will become an amplification of internal culture. Sorry, for better or worse. Study after study shows that while psychological safety might be less efficient in the short run, it's more productive over time. So most people think, well, look, we got to get to the point. We got to make a decision. I'm going to cut off debate. I'm going to cut off discussion. I'm going to shut you down. I'm going to make this happen, whatever, right? And because we got this goal to get to. And in the short term, that is more efficient. You'll probably get more done. Long term, you'll have people not sharing ideas, sharing information, working together, collaborating effectively, taking risks, getting outside of their comfort zones with each other. That just simply doesn't happen, and you have a less effective team. Now, what does this have to do with us as parents? Do we shut down conversation? Do we shut down? Are you questioning me? I'm your dad. I'm your mom, right? Like sometimes we feel, you're 5. You don't know what you're talking about, right? That's how we want to react. Can we be honest that sometimes we at least feel that way, right? But when we do that, we undermine psychological safety, and we create an environment where they don't learn how to think. Why? Because they can't practice thinking in that environment. You don't take risks. You're more worried about not offending someone. You might get really good about being a wallflower or navigating around, emotional minefields, right? Or landmines, I should say. But you won't become a good thinker without psychological safety. So psychological safety is broken down into 2 parts, okay? What's called voice and social sensitivity. Voice, first of all, is appallingly simple, and it's surprising, but it really makes sense once you think about it. Voice is when everyone on a team or everyone in a family gets roughly equal time to speak. Not equal decision-making power. In fact, Google tested that. They said, well, what if we make teams purely democratic? And so there's no, there might be a leader who initiates, but they're not going to make any decisions. That leader won't make the decisions. Everything is voted. That didn't make the team more effective. It's just simply everyone has a voice. Even if there's dissent, they were heard. And you feel safe in that. So voice is roughly equal time, over time, to share and think together. Share your ideas. In fact, Google has made it a rule now that in every one of their team meetings, everyone speaks. Everyone speaks. And over time, they believe that it'll work out to where everyone's roughly speaking equally. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not like you need a timer, but.
Isn't that interesting? Because we're at an LDS conference that we know that the form of the 12 apostles, everybody gets to speak up. Well, I don't know if you know that or not, but they do. We learned it when we were teaching Institute, that when they're coming to a decision, they listen to every person in that room.
That's
a voice.
Yeah,
it's kind of interesting that you're saying that because we already have that going on.
Oh, that's vital. That's vital. But too often we do the opposite, right? Whether it be in a church meeting, in a classroom, in a family, in an organization, in a company, right? We shut down things because we're trying to get to a goal. Or let's trust so-and-so because they know more about this, even though others have thoughts and opinions as well, right? We go to the expert and we shut everyone else down.
I was going to say, so the example I was going to share is that they were going to decide to take away the primary program. I don't know if you knew that or not, because the effort that was put into it, getting the kids and organizing and everything else, and everybody decided it was a good idea except for Ezra Taft Benson. And he said, no, the children desire a moment to shine. So they kept it.
Interesting.
But because everybody had an opportunity to say something, and they waited, and they always start with the youngest member of the quorum of the 12 first.
Interesting.
So you know.
The youngest person in the room?
No, the youngest seniority, that's right.
Oh, okay.
The youngest, the newest apostle.
Right. And Ezra Taft Benson, I'm not LDS, so I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're fine. Was he just one of the members, or?
Well, he was a member at that time. He wasn't the prophet at the time. He was within the quorum.
Oh, okay.
So
Interesting.
he was the only one that dissented the idea
of getting rid of that program.
getting rid of the primary.
And then it's still there. What you're saying is still there to this day because he dissented.
That's right.
Oh.
Sorry, I apologize.
No, you're good. You're good. No, I get it now.
We assume we say good job.
Yeah, I know. I get that a lot. It's okay. That's all right.
Can
Well,
I add something?
yeah.
So as I was growing up, I had a very dominant family and I was very quiet. And my sister, I always had the hardest relationship with her. She was very dominant. She shuts down everyone's opinion. And then I read Crucial Conversations, and I realized that I thought it maybe, this is I don't mean to sound so proud, but I thought that I was taking the higher road because I was being quiet. I was being the peacemaker of the family. And then I read that book and I realized that I wasn't providing that open dialogue. I was closing my voice. And then once I decided to speak up more, then my relationship totally healed with my sister.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And that's a little bit vulnerable to share, and I appreciate that. I really do. That's fantastic. That is exactly what creates psychological safety, is an open dialogue and hearing from each other. I'm probably more like your sister in a sense, that on our team at Williamsburg, there's been 8 of us for a long time that make up our admin team. And I'm always the elephant in the room, blah, 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 and want to talk too much, right? And share my opinions on everything. And as soon as I learned about this a few years ago, I started talking less in the meetings and just listening a lot more and just giving a lot more time to others. And what I found was 98% of the time, they're going to make the same decision, right, with my input or not, and it's a decision I support. I don't need to always say things, right? But sometimes I'll see, yeah, now I do need to say something. I have something really important to add, not that I just have this need to be heard, right? So I think there's kind of two ends of that spectrum. Is there's those of us who are sort of extroverted and probably allow a lot more time for others. When I lead my team, I'm the director of leadership at the program. When I lead my team, I want to kind of get out and talk and share and teach and show them how to teach and do all these things and do these trainings. And I find that our trainings are way better if I just present an idea quickly and succinctly, and then everyone weighs in on it. Everyone shares, everyone offers thoughts, practices what they're doing, what they're not doing, and so forth. And it's a way more dynamic meeting. And to boot, all of a sudden I'm creating 5-10 minutes of good content instead of trying to teach something for an hour meeting and you know what I mean, and try to convince them of whatever I'm thinking. So yeah, it really goes a long way. The other side is social sensitivity. That's the, how's your parents? How's your kids doing? My son was in and out of the hospital last week, and I got from colleague after colleague email, hey, I heard this, but, you know, and it just makes you feel like, hey, I'm cared about. My family's cared about. My world's cared about. Yeah, I'm taking, you know, not quite as much time at work. And I feel a little insecure about that because, you know, I've got a lot of work to do, right? But knowing that others recognize what I'm going through in the situation, and I got no sleep last night because he was up all night in pain, you know, it makes you realize, you know, oh, I'm safe here. So when we can do that from each other, how's it going? How's your life? Hey, I can notice that you're a little bit down today, or, you know, that creates an immense amount of psychological safety. So one of the things that we've developed into our culture at Williamsburg, how are we doing on time? I know we started late, so 1:47. Okay, we're gonna have to do this pretty quickly, but I want to do it with you, and then I'll just do the last one super fast, okay? In order to create psychological safety in our camps that we do, live camps together with students, is we do an experience called walls. And I want to invite you guys to do this with me today, okay? Now this is going to be a little bit socially uncomfortable, okay? Because it's going to require some prolonged eye contact. It's called walls, and I'll explain, yeah, walls. That's what we call it, walls, and I'll explain what it is. So, can I ask you to do it with me for a second? I'm just going to, okay, this is going to be a little bit foofy-la-la, but I promise it's powerful, okay? So what we,
George too, so.
oh, there you go. Okay, so we'll stand about roughly so far apart, and this is what we do with all of our students. We bring them together into groups, and we have them either touch hands like this, or touch hands like this, and I'm not joking, stare into each other's eyes. Okay, and go ahead and sit down. And it's not easy. It's not easy. And they experience what's called sonder. Okay, sonder is a powerful emotion. Tell me if you've ever had this experience before. Sonder, the realization that everyone is living life as vivid and complex as your own. Have you ever had that realization of like, oh, you have all of these complexities and all of these, right? Because we can only be in our own heads. And so everyone else becomes sort of actors in our play instead of they're in their own play. They're in their own life. That's sonder, okay? And what we have found, way to hack psychological safety, and I don't mean like hack it like bypass it, but the way to get to it quicker, right? The way to do that is to do walls and to get people to experience sonder together. And there's something about that when you've experienced that with someone, you care about them. Okay, so I'm going to invite all of us to do this. We don't have a whole lot of time. So if we can partner up, and you can do this with your partner for a moment, okay? So if you all come up, and some of us don't have a partner with us, some of you do, so partner up with someone else if you don't. We might have an odd person, so we'll see. And you don't have to do this, by the way, but stand across from your partner, find a partner.
was right over here. Did anybody went over here?
So,
I'll check this.
cool.
Okay.
All right, come on up. Would you like to try it with us? Okay. Would you mind doing it with this gentleman?
No problem.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we only have a few minutes to do this, so we're going to do a couple rounds of this, okay? I'd like you to lock up hands. You can either go this way or this way, whatever you prefer, okay? And I'm asking you to do this. Some of you don't know the person that you're with, but most of you do. And to stare into each other's eyes and to seek to experience Sonder. It's okay to giggle, but try to take it seriously. It's okay to, scratch your nose if you need to or something like that. But otherwise, try to remain in eye contact, experience that eye contact, and seek to experience Sonder. Again, Sonder is the realization that everyone is living life as vivid and complex as your own. And think about this question. What are you seeing in this person? Now with our youth, we preface this, I'm not going to preface it here, I'm just telling you this. Before we begin, we always say, okay, leave romantic feelings at the door. And a lot of you spouses obviously are going to have romantic feelings, and I am perfectly okay with that. But just so you know, we try to get rid of that and really look into the other person's eyes and experience a little bit of their world. Okay, now I'm going to ask everyone to switch partners and to go to someone you don't know. And we got to do it fairly quickly, so maybe just swap with people. Maybe you and he can swap real quick.
She knows me.
I know him.
Won't work.
Oh, she knows you. Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, wait, and then if you'll come here. Okay? And you too, if you guys would. Okay. Okay. All right. So this is where we're going to get to another level. I wanted you to start with people you know. I know not all of you did. But now I want you to do this with someone you don't know. And this is a different experience now. Okay, this is not someone you're necessarily comfortable with. I know a couple of you didn't do this with your spouses, but so now it's going to be a little bit of a different experience. It's a little bit unique. Us men tend not to ever do this, okay? And us ladies probably not so much either, right? But I encourage you to try to be comfortable and experience Sonder, look into their world, and we're going to experience this for a couple minutes, and then I'm going to ask you some questions. Go ahead.
Sure.
Won't find much there.
Okay, try not to talk and just see each other. See the safety in this person. Discover a little bit about them. They say that the eyes are the windows to the soul. Get a glimpse of that soul. At the same time, take off your own mask. Open yourself up emotionally and let them see you for who you are. Okay, now I'm going to ask you a question, and then I'm going to invite you to share the answer with the person you're with. The question is, what are you seeing? If you're facing sort of towards me, including you, you go first. Go ahead and share, and then the person across from you share next. Go ahead. So what do you see? What are you seeing in this other person, and share that with them?
Okay. So I see somebody that
Jumper.
And feel free to have the other person share as well.
Oh, yeah. Good job.
Okay, once you're done, go ahead and sit down. Okay. Okay, go ahead and sit down. Okay, quickly, I want to ask you to debrief this, and then we'll go on to our last principle, okay? Definitely a little bit uncomfortable, to be honest, right? A little bit, right? A little bit. Maybe not with your spouse. If it is with your spouse, don't talk to me about that. There's other people for that. Just kidding. But did you see a little bit of Sonder? Did you have that experience? Did that break down a wall, a barrier for you? Do you have a connection with that person that you haven't had before? Do you feel greater care towards that person? Yeah. What did you experience? Anyone want to share real fast? What did you experience? What did you see? What did you feel? Okay.
Joyce, is that right?
Yes.
I saw compassion and gentleness in her. I saw a gracious and gentle person, and that like sense of
Yeah. And if you were on a team with Joyce, having that experience, would that help you work with her and help you collaborate with her? Isn't that interesting? We find that when we create experiences like this and many, many others in our classes, that students move from being a class to a team, move from being a class to being collaborators, people working together on a journey. And sometimes when classes start acting like a class again and they move away from that, we just need to bring experiences back where they can see each other. We even do this online where they literally just look at each other.
and it works across the community.
It does, it really does. And it's powerful because you really see this person. And we actually have them answer a lot of questions and open up to each other as well. But it's powerful to see the psychological safety that's created from that and the amount of learning that can come next. Okay, all right, last principle, real quick. Dive into this one. This one's called overcoming confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is a cognitive bias-y. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about this.
Yeah. A cognitive bias. We have many cognitive biases, like for example, the opposite of Sonder is a cognitive bias, that we forget that other people have their world and their experiences. So we're biased to what we think and what we've experienced. You know what I mean? So there's lots of examples of cognitive biases, but confirmation bias is probably the most nefarious when it comes to great thinking. And so we're going to talk about this. In order to do this one, we're going to play a game. Okay? If you've played this before, please don't ruin it for everyone else. Okay? All right, so how we're going to play this game is I'm giving you 3 numbers, 2, 4, and 8. Okay? These numbers follow a certain mathematic principle, pattern. Okay? And how you play is you give me your own set of 3 numbers first, and I tell you whether or not those 3 numbers have follow the same mathematic principle. Okay, does that make sense? And then simply you get a chance to guess using that information to determine what that mathematic principle is. Make sense? So we're going to start off with a fairly simple one. Okay, so again, how you play, you give me 3 numbers, I tell you whether or not those 3 numbers fit the mathematic principle, and then you can determine from that what the mathematic principle is. Sound good? Okay, who wants to start? So my first 3 numbers, 2, 4, 8, you give me 3 numbers.
1, 2, 4.
1, 2, 4, yes, follows the principle. What's the principle?
Start with one number, double it, then double it again.
Good, so doubling. No, that's not it. Okay, good though, good answer. Okay, let's do another one.
1, 1, 1.
Well, okay, this is perfect. This is getting right to the heart of it, okay? No. What's the principle?
Squaring and cubing.
Squaring and then cubing. No, that's not it. Good. Good. I like that one though. But that one's a no. Okay. You had your hand up. 3 numbers first.
Okay, so 359.
359. Yes. Follows the principle. Don't know? Okay, let's pause here.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Did you have a guess or no? It's okay if you don't.
just one more than what's there. I mean, that's
One more than what's there?
One more.
Close. So you're getting really close. Okay, so let's pause there for a second. Okay? Really close. Both of you two, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had a theory in your mind of what it was. Doubling, right? And squaring and then cubing, right? So 111 fits that principle. Okay? So what you did is you came up with a theory, then you used an example that fit your theory, right? You got a yes, in this case, what's called a false positive. You got a positive result, but led you to a wrong conclusion, right? We've heard of false positives in CAT scans, right? And in medical, I had a friend, no joke, he was told he had 3 weeks to live and it was a false positive. He was totally fine. There's a problem with the CAT scan machine. False positives can be fairly destructive in the medical world, but they can also be really destructive to our thinking. So often what we do is we create a theory in our own minds, we get a positive result from that theory. I'm going to try simple. This is one that's not a big deal at all. I'm going to try this new shampoo because I'm going for this in my hair or whatever, right? I'm going to try this. And then it does it. Oh, I have a great hair day today. And then we're on Facebook. This is the best shampoo ever. We're recommending it to everyone, right? But do we really know that? Now, when it comes to shampoo, does it matter? Yeah. So let me give you another example of this. A lady was trying to sell me a product, and I actually really like this product. I've used it myself, but she definitely tried to oversell this product. Okay, she said, well, basically, if you put this onto anything, it's going to heal it. And I said, oh, it's like Neosporin, like you put it on a cut or abrasion or something, and it'll help it heal and not scar and stuff. She's like, yes, but it does more than that. And I thought, okay, what else does it do? And she proceeds to tell me, well, it'll help heal like a broken bone. Really? What else does it do? And I'm kind of a personality type that likes to egg on that and see how far it'll go, So what else will it do? Well, it'll heal cancer. Really? Heart disease. Really? We keep going. Finally, I'm saying, what else will it? I just keep asking that question. What else will it do? She says, it'll even heal emotional maladies. And finally I break down. I go, okay, you got to tell me. Because at this point, I already liked the product. I already knew I liked the product beforehand. I like it for other reasons. And to find that it is helpful in some healing, but not to the extent that she was saying. And so I say, well, tell me why you think this. Because at this point, again, I'm just interested in her thinking. And she says, well, every time my boys fight, she explains that she's got a 5 and a 7-year-old boy. Every time my boys fight, I stop them. I rub a little of this over their hearts. And they stop fighting. It's kind of an extreme example, but that's confirmation bias. I believe her. I believe her that she stopped her boys, she rubbed it over their hearts, and they stopped. I believe that has actually happened. But does that mean that product, solves an emotional malady like anger? No, it doesn't, right? Yet we do this all the time in our thinking. It's very, very common, and it gets in the way. So if you want to learn how to think better, this is what you want to do. You want to try to disprove your theory. Come up with a theory. That's a good thing, right? The theory shows that you're thinking. I think this might work. I'm going to go with this, right? Come up with a theory, but then try to disprove it, okay? So let's keep going. Come up with a theory in your mind of what you think the 3 numbers are, or what the mathematic principle is, I should say. Come Come up with a theory in your mind, but try to disprove your theory. Go against your theory. So let's do it again. Let's just take doubling. Give me 3 numbers that don't double, and let's see what we can get.
4, 3, and 2.
Perfect, perfect. Because this time you got a no. It doesn't follow the principle. What's the principle? Think about it. So we had 2, 4, 8. We had 1, 2, 4. We had 1, 1, 1, which was a no as well. Okay, so now we have 2 no's, 1, 1, 1, and 3, 2, 1, right? Or 4, 2, 3. 4, 3, 2. Okay, 4, 3, 2.
What about 1, 3, 5?
3, 5, 9. 3, 5, 9, you said yes.
Yeah, 3, 5. Oh, yeah, and you had 3.
14, 22.
1, 3, 7 is a yes. So what is it? Yeah, numbers in ascending order. You see how once you try to disprove the theory, the answer becomes very obvious? Okay, let's play it again. Let's play it again real fast. I might go like a couple minutes over, okay? Okay, all right. All right, so these are 3 people. We're going to play the same game, but this time you're going to give me a person, okay? These 3 people, who are they? Good, good. So Washington, Franklin, and Jefferson, okay? These 3 people have a commonality, okay? The name of the game is you need to find out what the commonality is, okay? That's it. So how you play is you give me a person. It needs to be a person I would know. It can't be like Joe down the street because I don't know Joe down the street, okay? A person that you would, or that I would know, and I will tell you whether or not that person has the same commonality. This time, instead of come up with a theory of what you think the commonality is, but don't give me something that's consistent with that theory. Give me a person that doesn't have that commonality. Does that make sense? Okay, no problem. No, it's a little hard to get at first. So you have a theory in your mind. Let's say, and I'll start. Let's say founding fathers. Okay, fairly obvious one, right? All 3 are founding fathers. Okay, so you might say, give me a non-founding father. Anyone?
Abraham Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln. So I would say to that, yes, has the same commonality.
Obama.
But now you know for a fact it's not founding fathers because Abraham Lincoln wasn't a founding father. Had you said, consistent with your theory, had you said John Hancock, and I had said yes, in that situation, you still don't know for sure whether or not it's a founding father. Right? Does that make sense?
You're confirming my bias.
Yeah, but we're not actually learning anything new in that.
Give a theory and then something that doesn't fit.
Yeah, so give me an example of something that doesn't fit your theory, and you'll get to the answer faster. In other words, try to disprove yourself. What we do as human beings, we're always trying to prove ourselves right. We're going to be right, right? Actually leads to worse thinking. Try to disprove your theory, and you'll get to answers more quickly and more efficiently and better, okay? So we got 1, but that was a yes. Try to get a no. That's where it really becomes obvious. Okay, give me a person that's not consistent with your theory. Benedict Arnold, actually, yes. What was your theory?
That they were Republic, Republic defenders of the
Patriots.
United States.
Okay, so patriots. So we know it's not patriots. So now you know for sure it's not patriots because Benedict Arnold was no patriot, right? Okay, so now you know that for sure. Okay? Now you said Hillary Clinton, and that's another yes. What was your theory?
Men.
Men. Good. So could be women. Okay? Try to get a no.
Betsy Ross.
Yes. Uh-huh. What was your theory?
Appears on money.
But Hillary Clinton doesn't either.
Oh, I didn't hear.
Oh, no problem.
Mother Teresa.
Perfect. No.
She's not an American.
Exactly. Do you see how the no makes it so obvious, but the yes doesn't? Does that make sense? Again, we spend so much time, so much effort in our lives trying to prove our theories correct, right? Leads to poor thinking. At best, you get a false positive, and it's basically a coincidence if you're right. Okay? Give you an example. My son was in and out of the hospital last week, right? Guess what? We got this theory. Let's take him off gluten. He's in severe pain. Maybe he has celiacs. Let's take him off gluten. We took him off gluten, and guess what happened? He was fine. No hurt stomach. Oh, it must be celiac. So we went around thinking for a couple days, we don't know for sure. I know confirmation bias, but hey, maybe it's celiac. Then he's at a friend's house, and that friend makes himself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with bread, gluten, and he has some of it. No hurt stomach. Something else, right? Do you see how? But we got a false positive, right? What did you say? Sorry.
The peanut butter neutralizes the gluten.
Yeah, exactly. There's another confirmation bias. But no, we could have just gone forward for maybe for the rest of his life. He never eating bread, right? Because of a false positive. It's so easy to fall victim. And we do it all the time in our lives. If you want to become a better thinker, try to disprove your theories. Okay, 3 principles. Let's just go back, and I'll wrap up here, I promise. I know, I have. Okay, so psychological projections, right? Taking ownership of your thinking. If you can't take ownership of your thinking, the rest of these don't matter, because it's everyone else's problem. First principle of learning how to think, take ownership of your thinking. Second one, live in and create spaces of psychological safety. Then you're free to think. You're free to try. You're free to experience. You're free to go out on a limb. You're free to make a mistake and not be beat over the head for it, right? Then you can practice thinking. Then once you start practicing thinking, beware of confirmation bias. Don't try to prove yourself right. In other words, be willing to say, I might be wrong. I don't know. I don't know is a powerful phrase. A phrase that we don't give a lot of credit to. Because we always champion those who know and they went and did things. And that's good to know things, sure. But I don't know says, I'm open to learning. I know can say, I'm not open to learning. Now that doesn't mean that you don't know things, but be careful with that, because we could become victim of confirmation bias. Instead, I don't know says, I'm open to learning. I'm open to discovering. In my own journey, faith journey, I don't know led me to God personally, okay? But saying I know from the beginning, which I did when I was very young, made me discount God, made me discount the process, made me just go, I already know that. But once I really had to think about it and question it and go, I don't really know, then you can get to conclusions. You open yourself to learning. Okay, thanks guys.